Welcome to the MFS Wellness Podcast, a hybrid structure encompassing health, fitness, self-improvement, and entertainment, where no topic is off limits and all opinions are graciously welcomed.
Let's get on with the show!
And now, here's the host of the show, Mike Sinopoli.
Welcome to the MFS Wellness Podcast. I am Mike Sinopoli, certified nutrition coach, consultant, counselor, call me whatever you would like. On this episode, I'm going to run through the macronutrient list, as well as sugar. Now, with each macronutrient, and I'll explain what those are in a second, there's a more advantageous nutritionally side to each one, and a less advantageous one. So what we're going to do is kind of go through the difference so you can kind of understand that each one is going to have something that's a little bit better than the other. What are the macronutrients? Those are protein, fat, and carbs. I'm also going to throw sugar on here as well as a separate thing. This isn't so much for body composition, majority of this. Some is, but most is just for your internal health and kind of going forward on how to like split up the carbohydrates, split up the fat, split up the proteins and the sugars, and see what exactly will be best for you overall. Now, this is important. When I mention that something is less advantageous nutritionally, that does not mean you have to feel bad about eating it. That doesn't mean you have to completely eliminate it from your diet. You just want to limit it to something, especially if you have a health issue or at high risk for something, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, anything of the sort. That's something you'll want to pay attention to when you go through here. This is something that should be brought up by a nutritionist, a dietitian, a physician, whoever else if they know. Some don't. Some doctors don't have this information. They don't know. They haven't been educated in that throughout their whole process of earning their PhD or doctorate. But that's okay because, a brain surgeon, I don't need them to know the difference between a low and high glycemic carbohydrate. They should know how to operate on a brain tumor, and that's where they should do all of their work. They should be focusing on that only. So, just because it says they're a doctor doesn't mean they know everything about nutrition, but that's okay because they're probably specialized in something else to save your life. Moving forward here. So just to get started, protein. We're going to start with protein. Protein is kind of confusing. There's just 9 essential amino acids. I'm not going to list them off here, but there's a complete protein. A complete protein and contains all 9 essential amino acids. Overall, this is best for your overall health as well as preserving and gaining muscle mass. You want all those amino acids to keep that muscle tissue growing or preserved so that you keep your metabolism up, and those are overall the best ones for you. A complete protein would be something along the lines of animal products like beef, poultry, fish, eggs, lean pork, dairy. Some plant-based options could be tofu, tempeh, soybeans like edamame, quinoa, buckwheat, and hemp seed. So those are some complete proteins. So you want to probably get 80% or so of your protein from those sources. Those are the most ideal for your body. An incomplete protein, or basically just a protein source that doesn't contain all 9 essential amino acids, as long as it's missing 1 or more, it's considered an incomplete protein. Now, that can be nuts or seeds, whole grains like certain beans and rice. You can combine these things to make a complete protein, but the issue that you may run into is you may overeat carbohydrates trying to hit a protein target. So like vegans and vegetarians are going to have a very hard time usually. Now I know they have supplements now for them, as like vegan protein and such, but that also has to be looked at to see if complete. But what they can do is combine rice and beans to make a complete protein, but that adds a lot of carbohydrates in, which aren't necessarily bad for you. But what they do is add a lot of extra calories to your meals, and that can throw you over your maintenance and into a surplus, and all of a sudden you're putting fat on, and you don't know why, because you're presumably eating healthy or eating right. So those are the things you want to look for: complete protein over incomplete. But if it's incomplete protein, keep it in your diet if you enjoy it. That's bottom line. And again, even an incomplete protein isn't necessarily damaging to your health. It's just less beneficial. Moving along to fat. So there's 2 types of fat. We have saturated fat and unsaturated fat, or polyunsaturated fat, they like to call it. Now, consuming too much saturated fat can lead to high cholesterol, LDL cholesterol. That's another split to know. If you have a cholesterol problem, LDL versus HDL. One is the good cholesterol, the other is the bad. The bad cholesterol is the LDL. So if your doctor ever states that you have high cholesterol, need to watch your cholesterol intake, I would highly recommend looking at the difference between HDL and LDL. The reason being is because you may deprive yourself of a lot of different foods that are high in HDL cholesterol, and that can get frustrating when you have to eliminate a lot of things. You may be able to eat a specific type of food with a higher HDL. So look into that, talk to your doctor, see if they know about that if you have that issue. Saturated fats also can lead to strokes, heart disease, and other health problems, pushing obesity and high blood pressure as well. Some examples of saturated fats. We got butter, lard, cakes, biscuits, fatty meats, cheese, bacon, and cured meat. So those are the types of fats. If you can see it in the bacon, you see the fat just sitting there. It's not a lean cut. It's got a lot of saturated fat in there. Now, if you think about a double bacon cheeseburger, you've got 3 right there: cheese, fatty beef, and bacon. So that's a food that you want to limit for sure. Going forward for overall health. Now, an example to know what a saturated versus less saturated fat food would look like. First of all, an unsaturated fat is considered a healthier fat. They just strictly are fat grams with a lower saturated fat percentage. So if you think about like a serving of cheese, right, it has 9 grams of fat total. 6 of those are saturated fat. So there you can see it's 66% of the food is saturated fat. So it's a high fat food, high saturated fat food. But you compare that to something like almonds, which is considered a healthier fat, that has 15 grams of fat. So you can see it has more fat per serving, but only 1 gram is saturated. So that's only about 7% saturated fat. So that's what makes the almonds a healthier fat. Other ideas or examples of polyunsaturated fats would be extra virgin olive oil, avocado, other nuts, seeds, salmon, and dark chocolate. So you want to also, I would 80-20 that as well. I would try to keep 80% of your fat as unsaturated versus saturated. That'll just be beneficial for your health in the long run, according to the science. Carbs, carbohydrates are up next. Everybody hates all carbs, right? The mainstream diet culture makes you believe that carbohydrates are in fact the devil come to life in food form. They scare you from them. They make you feel guilty about consuming them. And our diet culture has screwed itself heavily by this demonization. That is untrue. Carbohydrates are completely fine to consume and are beneficial for you as well, whether you're building muscle, trying to go for an endurance goal, just your overall health as well, and your eating pleasure. I mean, who wants to just not eat carbs and just sit around trying to do keto crap forever? I don't, and I never will. The only way I'll ever have to really carbohydrate restrict myself, and the people that do, are usually from what we call high glycemic carbohydrates. And those are the carbohydrates that spike insulin and blood sugar faster than lower glycemic carbohydrates. And this can lead to all kinds of blood sugar issues, type 2 diabetes, which is running rampant throughout the United States and around the world due to our piss poor diet. Low glycemic carbs, basically, they will do the opposite of that. They will not spike your blood sugar that fast. They will reduce your chances of type 2 diabetes. So those are the ones you want to aim for. And I'll get more into that in a second. So they're also low glycemic carbs can be a good source of fiber and will keep you fuller longer. And a lot of them are going to be less processed and more natural foods. So some ideas of what a high glycemic carbohydrate food would be most processed foods high in added sugar, soda, chips, pretzels, potatoes, white potatoes especially, fries, cheeseburgers, fried chicken, pizza, white bread, some cereals, and donuts. Now I know that's all probably a bunch of your favorite foods, but the truth is the truth. So the medium to low glycemic carbohydrates, that short list of that would be fruit, vegetables, beans, dark chocolate, sweet potatoes, brown rice, rice bran, plain Greek yogurt, and couscous. So those are some that you'll want to do. What you can do is look for a glycemic index if you are a pre-diabetic or potentially have high risk for type 2 diabetes, or you're towing the line, or even already have it and want to try to reverse it. What you can look for is a glycemic index on the internet. I have a few that I keep that have a lot of foods in there. What they do is associate a carbohydrate with a glycemic index number or a GI number. And anything rated 55 or less is considered a low glycemic carb. So that's where you want to stay is 55 and under. A medium would be 56 to 69. And a high glycemic carb is rated 70 and up. So you really want to keep the 70 and up carbs to a minimum for your overall health. I gave you some of the examples. I won't go through any more. You could look that up by just a simple Google search. You'll probably find a bunch of different ones. Just go with whatever one looks most comprehensive to you. Lastly, I'm going to just touch on sugar. It's not much to say here about natural versus added sugar, refined sugar, they call it. Refined sugars are in your sodas, your candies, a lot of cereals, baking mixes, syrups, high fructose corn syrup, easy for me to say, and really anything processed that we've seen before. Your cookies, your donuts, everything like that's going to be just the bad sugar, if you want to call it the deadly sugar. Now again, like before, we don't want to completely eliminate it from our lives because that's deprivation. And if you can completely eliminate it, I think that's great because I don't believe there's any sort of benefit to consuming sugar, believe it or not, other than pleasure. So, life's short though, so enjoy the donut when you can. Why not? Some natural sugars, obviously fruits and vegetables are there, honey, milk, yogurts, things like that are naturally occurring. You could find a list. It's not too hard to differentiate good versus bad when it comes to sugar or, refined versus natural. It's obvious. It's the crap versus the real food. That's really it. So that's basically a rundown of how the macronutrients are split to ones that are more advantageous for your health than others. If you wanted to ever get in touch with me and get a copy of the glycemic index I use or anything else or have a question, you can find me on social media. The handle is at MFS Wellness. That's going to be on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. You can shoot me an email at your leisure. That's going to be mike@mfswellness.com, and I will respond as quickly as possible. Once again, I want to thank everybody who listens to this podcast. I've enjoyed it, and I love doing it. If you ever have an idea for it, shoot me a message at any time. If you want to give me some feedback, positive or negative, do the same. Just like I said before, social media or by email. Until we do the next episode, have a great weekend, and we'll take care.